Hello and welcome to Roundtable number 17 of Dualistic Unity. I am willing to remain uncertain about what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, what the thoughts mean going through my head, where all of this is going, be it me or reality or this conversation. Just unwilling to settle upon an idea of what I think it's going to be because it's never going to be that. So you might as well just remain uncertain and remain free.
I am likewise unwilling to take myself too seriously. And that's all I'm ever doing when I'm believing an idea of myself is I'm taking myself seriously and trying to consider what I am and where I am and how I'm doing and all of that other ridiculous bullshit that at the end of the day is just false certainty. It's just assumption. And so fuck it. My priority is just to let go. Why is that my priority? Because I've seen the benefit over and over and over again whenever I've had the courage to do so. And so this is why Andrew and I always say, don't believe us. Try it yourself. And by it, I mean just be, let go, surrender. Stop thinking that you need to cope with every thought that goes through your brain because all you're doing is reinforcing it.
So, with all of that said, I hope you enjoy this live stream that is Roundtable number 17 of Dualistic Unity.
And here we are for another live stream, another roundtable. God, I love these. I miss them when we don't do them. The call-in shows are great, but it's always nice to just sit down, touch base with everybody in the community. Not that we don't do it the rest of the week, but now we get to show off how much fun it is. So thank you, everyone who could be here today. We really appreciate it. As always, for everyone who is listening, we are joined by Amanda, as always, and Jazz and Ben. Good to see you. We've seen Ben in a number of groups before and on the call-in show. So it's nice that he could be here for today's roundtable. Mark, Marie, you've both been here before, so no introduction is necessary. Of course, anybody who's been carrying on with the roundtables will know you. But we are joined by Jason today. And Jason is a new addition to the roundtable as well. And he has not, I believe, ever done a section on the call-in show. And so I believe you might be new to our listeners, Jason. Do you mind telling us a bit about yourself and how you came to the podcast and why you volunteered for a roundtable?
So first I'll start off with, I said, why not? That was the main thing. It was like, there was way more reasons to do it than to not do it, especially just because. But then again, as I started getting closer to 6 o'clock, I was stuck in traffic, so I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. Also, my stomach was bothering me, so it feels like, when you just feel like you don't know if you have to use the bathroom or throw up, because my stomach sometimes bothers me. So that was another reason that I could have just gone with and been like, you know what, yeah, it's fine. I don't have to go. And the thing is, we could do that at any point, So I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna hop in. And then it was like, oh, but what do you think is gonna happen? And I started thinking of a few things, and I was like, oh, those are a lot of things to prepare for. And then I was just like, you know what, I really don't know. And any attempt to know is just an assumption. So just looking at all that, I'm just like, I just put all of it down and I said, fuck it, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna hop in. But no, I actually been listening to you guys for a little bit now. I think it was about a year ago that I first realized what that heaviness was. Or no, it wasn't so much of what it was, but more so that there was a heaviness. And that at that moment that I realized I've been living life with this heaviness that's only gotten heavier and heavier, that in that moment I was free from it. So, from there, I kind of looked into different things. Like I was looking into Christianity because I felt super interconnected with just everything, just with everything, feeling that connectedness. And I remember just there was like no narrative. It was like for the first time I could sit there and there was no, yeah, there was no like, there was no opinions, there was no judgment. I remember coming back to work, and there was somebody that came into my job extremely aggravated about something. I had no clue. Well, you know, looking back, I have no clue. I can't remember. It was a while ago. But all I remember is that I was looking at this person, and I just wanted to help them. You're yelling at me, but for some reason, I don't feel insulted at all, because there's a recognition that it has nothing to do with me, and everything to do with what you've got going on in your reality. And seeing that, and knowing from my own experiences of dealing with, you know, having panic attacks in the middle of the hallway in high school, and you know, and then after senior season having 4 concussions and just kind of being in bed for like 8 months during COVID, you know, reaching those lowest, because I very much identified with, you know, who I thought I was, which was this student athlete that had these goals and had this certain future, this certain trajectory of where I was going. And so when all of that just kind of crumbled, you know, it just showed me how much of an illusion it was, you know, because like I said before, like I don't know. Coming into this, I had no idea I was gonna express the things that I'm expressing right now, but there's no, lately there hasn't been any resistance. So like right now, my stomach may be feeling the way it feels, right? That's for me to resist. That is for me to resist what I am, is to resist a piece of me, to try and reject the piece of me. And right away, that's just being in conflict with what is, you know, with just the reality in whatever shape or form. So lately, there's definitely been like a back and forth, because, you know, experiencing that polar opposite was amazing. But then little by little, coming back to work, being around certain people, people kind of nudge you, you know, to care about certain things. I care about this, so you got to care about this too. You know, we got to keep this thing going. You know, we got to keep this whole illusion going. And so, yeah, so I got a little bit into it too. And then I also started to get wrapped up in the beliefs of, you know, Christianity and all that, just because that's what I was raised in. I was raised with a mother that was very much into Christianity, but had strayed away and then came back. But one thing, it was never really forced. But definitely, if I mention, yeah, there's definitely some resistance. I will say there's resistance, but there's no force to believe in what she believes in. And I talk to her a lot about just little things that are weighing her down. I like to just bring up a few things like, oh, well, let's look at that. Is that really how it is, or is it that way because you say that it is that way? You know, that's like a little placebo and stuff. But I'm going all over the place, really. But it's all connected. It's all just part of this journey. So after getting caught up back and forth a little bit, I came across you guys maybe like 6 months ago. Maybe like 6 months ago, I came across Dualistic Unity, and it was one of Andrew's clips. Actually, I don't know which one, but it was a clip on Instagram, and it resonated. So I think it was actually something, had something to do. So I remember, because there's so many videos now. You know, very much of you know, you don't exist. You know, oh, like what if you didn't have a story? I think it was. I think it was like one of those. You know, what if, you know, all your memories, they just, yeah, I don't remember exactly which one. But you know, I saw that, and I looked into Dualistic Unity. I was listening to it, and it was just resonating a lot. And I was like, huh, this is it right here. Like that lightness, you know, that lightness, that freedom to just to be. Because when I did first experience that freedom, there was no, I wasn't, I was the flow. I was gonna say like I was in the flow, but it was like I very much just realized that I've always been the flow. And so just kind of like living in that, it was like nothing could go wrong. Because the only thing that changed was that I started letting go of there being um something that could go wrong, like an objective wrong, an objective right, you know, just all of that. And the biggest thing that has always came back to me in the moments of like confusion right? Like, because when I'm in this shit, I'll be like, damn, this person to the left of me, perfectly fine. We're both doing this thing. But for some reason, me doing it comes with all this fucking extra shit. And it's just like, that just shows you like how you need to weed the garden, so to speak. So now it's just, even in those states, can I not resist my resistance? So in those states where like I'm resisting, right? Oh, I'm telling myself a whole story now, it means this, and my chest is tight. Can I relax into that? That right there. So now it's like, okay, wherever I'm at, it doesn't matter. And so there's no preferences for like what thoughts come in. Like if I wake up with a bunch of intrusive thoughts, it's like, okay, like it just is what it is. It's just, it is what it is. And that's something I've heard so many times just growing up. Like, damn, chill out, dude. Because I've had friends, I've been like, yo, bro, just relax. It is what it is. And I'm like, yeah. And I have a fucking issue with it. But it's funny because it's right there. It was like, it wasn't the experience that you had to get rid of, or the circumstances that you had to get rid of. It was just letting go and letting those thoughts air out. Letting them air out. So you can, it's like when you have a bag of laundry and it's soaking wet, it's really heavy on your back. But as soon as you put in the dryer and you let it air out and you let it dry, right? You can see that it was never that heavy. And the same thing goes with all the beliefs that pop in our head, all the thoughts that pop into our head that aren't really our voice, that we've just kind of latched onto, because this person told me this at age 6, this person told me this at age 8. And just recognizing that even though they feel real, the reason why they feel real is because you've told yourself this story so many times, and they come with that emotion, and so it's just that cycle, because now you have a certain opinion of whatever it is that you're going through, like that, just that loop going over and over again. But yeah, my name is Jason. I don't even think I even said that. But yes, my name is Jason. I live over here in New York, on Long Island. And I'm 21 years old, just turned 21. I saw Marie got excited. You must be on Long Island as well. Yeah? No? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, so that's my story. I do security, which has nothing to do with me, but I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for, welcoming me. You guys have always welcomed me. And I've made sure to do the same because it's all me. So you guys, I'm going to pass it on to whoever is next. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Fuck yeah. Thank you. That's a hell of an introduction to the community. Jason, everyone, Jason, same thing. I'm just using different labels for the same thing. This is great. I really appreciate, again, everyone being here. We have seen Jason, of course, in our Patreon groups, as well as on Discord, as with everyone here, I believe, who is also on Discord and in our Patreon groups. So if you haven't joined us on Patreon or Discord, definitely do so. I do want to take a moment before I pass it over to Andrew and remind everybody that we have a coupon code this month to save 25% off on any of our individual workshops. There are 5 workshops about relationships, coaching, moving beyond belief, beyond the world of religion to more of a recognition of what is, bunch of stuff. You can use the coupon code Yes You May, because it's May, and I thought that was funny. Aside from that, I also want to remind everybody that we have a LinkedIn page, and if you would like to help us out, go and follow that LinkedIn page or like it, so that way we can get to the point where we can live stream on LinkedIn. And lastly, if you are on Twitter right now watching this, do retweet this or like it or comment on it or do something with it. Just help that shit along. Andrew?
Yes, and any help is greatly appreciated. But Jason, man, fucking A, that was an awesome way to kick off this roundtable. I really appreciate you sharing all that stuff. I was like tracking with some notes as you were going, like points I wanted to bring up about it, and it just you kept going in through different things, and like that you kind of did a nice little summary of like a lot of the stuff we talk about, a lot of the stuff the podcast is all about. It was like a nice little table of contents for maybe what we're going to get into this episode on, and because it really does come down to that narrative, the shift from, it's not about what story you're telling yourself, it's just about dropping the story. It's like we think we have to go from a negative story to a positive story, and if we just tell ourselves that story and maintain that, then we can just ride that off forever. And it never goes like that, because it's never actually what's happening. And so it's not about the stories we tell ourselves. It's just about dropping those and letting go of our craving for fucking certainty, because that's all it is. And being willing to sit in that uncertainty, being willing to step into something, be like, I'm not bolstering myself up because that's going to come crumbling down at some point. I can just hang out here in that uncertainty and see where it takes me. So yeah, I mean, I have so much to say about everything you said, but I won't get into it immediately. But yeah, I'll pass it on to I know most of you have been on. Has everyone else been on a roundtable so far?
Except for Ben. Ben,
Not
who
Ben.
has
Okay, that's what
joined
I
us
thought.
on so
Yeah.
many groups and on the call-in show, and was at the first retreat, no less. So Ben, we are glad that you could be here. Would you like to say a few words and introduce yourself to the people who maybe have not listened to the call-in show? Because the roundtable is a much shorter series. This is roundtable number 17. That's fucking crazy.
Yes, I would like to introduce myself. Yeah, so my name is Ben. I've been on a bunch of groups, and this is my first roundtable episode. I'm very excited because I've always wanted to be on an episode since I first started listening to the podcast a little over a year ago. And I guess we can just touching on Jason's introduction, that was incredible. I had such an easy time following your insights and your story that I was like, honestly, you could talk the rest of the episode and I'd be perfectly fine with that. It flowed so nicely. And yeah, I have a little sense of nervousness too in me for being here, even though I've been on a shit ton of groups. Just like this live and I've been on the call-in show too. So yeah, it's just a different experience, and I have feelings of nervousness, and that's just how I am processing this moment right now. That's okay. So how do I start? How do I get into the dualistic unity? I've always been a deep thinker in my life. I've always tried to just think on a deeper level on about the universe and what our place in it is. And I, only recognized that I was everything until last year. So all of my life, having deep conversations was my favorite thing to talk about. But I was still in the prison of the ego. But it was fun. It was fun to have that basis and then kind of explore it throughout my ego development. But I was also suffering a lot. I was having anxiety, judgments, attachments, things that I did not feel good about in my life. Social anxiety, really, really quiet in high school. I was pretty okay in grade school, but once I got to high school and I kind of went to I kind of lost all my grade school friends. That was quite a challenge for me because I found a new group at first, but they eventually found out it didn't really vibe with them, and that was kind of a shocking experience and just sent me in probably into one of the lowest parts of my life where, I didn't really say there would be some days in high school where I didn't say a word. I just didn't talk to anyone. And yeah, just didn't want to, I don't know, put myself out there. So that's why I didn't speak. And maybe I was regarded as the quiet kid, but Yeah, all that looking back on it is necessary for to get to where I am now. I guess I learned how to be a mindful observer of situations during my quiet time in high school. And then I really started to gain more confidence the second half of junior year. And then just it just kept going up throughout college. I kept finding ways that I enjoyed being with myself. And then even in college, like in most social situations, like I'd be super comfortable, but at the same time, I'd still something about me really enjoyed observing just everything. Like I'd be at like a party, and at one point I just would have enough of the conversation and go off into like the corner and just have my drink with me and just look around, look at all the conversations happening at the party. And um I also DJ. So a DJ is kind of in that observer position at social events. And not only are they observing it, but they're you could say enhancing or shifting the vibe of the entire room, not through their voice, but through a different medium. And I absolutely love music and how it makes me feel. So I was like, yeah, I feel like I kind of belong in the DJ booth, and just kind of making people, just enhancing their experience, but I'm not directly talking to them. And that's kind of like the way I like to go about it. But man, I'm not really talking about how I got it. No, this is how I got into DO. Um, so yeah, graduated college and COVID happened. So I downloaded TikTok and I, I'm still in this like deep thinking state. I've always been, but I'm still suffering. Like I went through a couple of relationship type situations as well, where I just get attached to the person very easily. And then it makes it really hard for me when we don't align. And then I'm like, but why? Like, why? How come this isn't working out if it should be? So I had like one of those situations in the fall of 2021. And then, yeah, just like like suffering through it. And I come across this person on TikTok who goes by the name of Dr. Bang. And he's a great, very insightful person. And he's just talking about like just the big picture, just life and how it's all a game. And I'm like, wow, like, okay, most people in my life at the time don't talk about this stuff anymore. So this guy on TikTok is like finally talking about it. And I'm just like blown away because this is someone who thinks exactly how I think about the universe. And so like I do like a deep dive on his channel and find out like, I don't know, I'm just really enthralled with someone who thinks about life like this. And so that probably, told the TikTok algorithm to send me a video from Andrew. So yeah, I had my first Andrew video probably in like February of last year. And the one that it was when he was like walking through New York and he was like, am I Andrew in New York, or is it all just like a happening? And am I just part of this happening? And then this dog walked by him and he moved out of the dog's way. And he was like, see, like me moving out of the dog's way, did I decide that, or did it just happen and I was a part of that? And I was like, yo, what are you getting at here, man? Like, let me do some investigation on your profile. So yeah, deep dived into Andrew's profile, found out about the podcast. Listened to I didn't listen to episode 1 right away. I think I like jumped around on the titles because some of the titles were really interesting. And I think it was like maybe episode 8 already. And the first the first perception I had of the podcast was that you guys were telling me to completely kill my identity. And that like rubbed me the wrong way. So I was like, this is too much. I like being Ben. So I'm gonna stop. So I stopped listening to the podcast for like a month. And then I started going through some suffering again. And I was like, okay, wait. Something in me just was like, I gotta give this another try. Because they're the only ones that are like talking something nearly close to this. And then the second time I came back, I started from episode 1, and then it hit where it was like, okay, you don't have to abandon your identity. It's just an option. And then I was like, oh shit, like, okay, I don't have to carry all the story with me. But if I'm not carrying that story, then who am I? And then that just shot me down the abyss of eternity. And have been, questioning relentlessly ever since. And it has been a absolutely gorgeous journey, from the first time I ever recognized that, oh my God, I am everything. Like, I was in my room right here, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go on a walk. But this time, it's all me. That was the first thing I ever did after the recognition. I was like, oh, this plant, that's me. Oh, this brick house right here, that's me. This person, that's me. And I was just like, whoa, this is so cool. Wow. And it's just kind of been constant astonishment since. And but there's this saying, don't lose yourself to astonishment. So I've been trying to find a balance of being astonished and then also participating in the current game of life that we have built up throughout the years. So that's it for me.
As always, we appreciate you being here, Ben. Ben is also often in our Patreon groups, and you can catch him in previous call-in shows, everyone. So I do encourage you to go and check out those call-in shows. Those would be episodes of Dualistic Unity Raw that we just label call-in edition. There's no rhyme or reason or any way to indicate which one anyone's on there, but shuffle through, you'll find them. It's all worthwhile. That said, don't skip episode 1.
Don't skip episode 1 or season 2, because we see the dip in season 2. Everyone goes through season 1, they jump to season 3, and it's just like, yeah. And then they're like, what about this? And we're like, yeah, we actually talked about that a bunch in season 2. Did you listen to that? Oh no, I skipped that one. Oh, there you go. Yeah, check that one out, and then just come back to us. But Ben, no, I appreciate you sharing all that, man. I definitely resonate a lot with that. As I know you've said, you've resonated with my story in the past, and just because I was very similar through high school. I had just a strong concern for the perception of other people, and what it really came down to was just looking for an excuse to accept myself for what I am, and a willingness to just be myself. And there was just an avoidance of that, and the suffering that came with it was not this like outward thing. It was all inward. It was all just avoidance of basically anything, any situation that was putting myself out there and risking being judged in any way, shape, or form, really. And so through that process of questioning, of recognizing that story that I told myself was never actually the truth of what I was, and just continuing on down that, like, inevitably you're going to get to the point where you start to have this conversation. It's kind of like what it comes to is the willingness to continue to question anything you settle upon, any ideas, any certainties that you have, even the most, like, the strongest ones we have in our society, because there's a lot that we settle upon, and they're never ever the truth. So it's awesome to hear a little more about your journey and way that you came across us, and your just willingness to continue that process of questioning is always inspiring, man. So I appreciate you sharing. all of that. And yeah, I will pass to Marie. How you doing, Marie? Good to see you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Jason and Ben, for kicking this off. What a great way to get into this conversation. And it's so cool to like listen to people's stories because of how much like we resonate to one another, because it's all the same. And we're all connected, and it's all like, so thank you for doing that. And I just wanted to say that I absolutely skipped the episode 1 before jumping into this conversation with you all. I found Andrew, was like, yep, ready for this, whatever this person's about. He's walking through New York saying shit that people aren't usually, I'm here for it. What's happening here? So then I found both of you. I found out that you could call in. I went to one of those call-in shows. I'm fucking ready for this. I don't care. I don't need an introduction. I'm ready. Like, whatever, I'm ready. And it was so awesome to like jump into this community and like feel at home. Like, I was like, yes, okay, here we are. Here's what not I've been looking for, because the looking for really is the recognition. So I had the recognition. It was like, who else is like seeing life this way, right? Like I had a couple, right? And it was really my dad, but it was nobody, like, especially that when I was, you guys talk about high school. My God, first of all, I don't even remember high school anymore, but uh, just because memories, they're silly. That doesn't define me. It's only here in this moment ever. Anyway, I definitely was quiet, Ben. I agree with that. I was quietly observing and questioning, and like questioning why no one else was questioning. Why are we getting involved? Why are we getting so wrapped up in this bullshit when here we are in maybe a universe that is so vast, if that even exists. I'm here questioning that while you all are dealing with your drama. That's fine, but I did eventually watch episode 1 because of how often you always say that. I'm like, I should actually go back and watch that, and would say probably for majority it makes sense to do that, but I was just so freaking excited to jump in. I didn't even care. I was like, sorry. And after the first call, I knew. After, it was really like when I got to talk to y'all. I don't know if that makes a difference. It did for me, I guess, but it just felt like, oh yeah, I know y'all. I know this. This is it. This is it right here. So thanks.
That's definitely, I would say, the next best thing, if not better, than listening to episode 1 is just talk to us, just connect with us. This is something that we really are trying to encourage in season 5, especially where we're doing more call-in shows. We're going to be doing one every Thursday now for an hour. So that's something that we're hoping people will start to take more advantage of in terms of just jumping on there right away, because often we'll get about halfway through a call-in show and then all of a sudden we'll start getting people trickle in after that. So it's really just about taking advantage of the opportunities. If you can't join us on Patreon, we have a free group every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. You can chat with us there. You can comment in the live stream. And if it's not something ridiculous, like crushing over Andrew, for example, we'll respond to you. We really will. If it's something that's serious and you have a question and you'd like us to address it, we're happy to do that. You can engage with us and we're happy to answer all of your questions. Or you can also go and buy a workshop, or you can just ask us a question and we'll spin through it, because we want to share this stuff with you. We really do.
Absolutely. And Marie, to your point, it really is just about the conversation. So as great as it is to have the podcast as it's almost like a reference point, it really does become just about the conversation and the things we do in our day-to-day lives. Like we've said it so many times, like, do not believe in the podcast, do not follow the podcast to a T, just use it as you see fit in your life. That said, listening to it chronologically is definitely a good idea, I would say. If you are choosing to listen to it, season 1 and 2 in order is the best way, but it's not the only way by any means. But yeah, it really is about the conversation. And that's hence the shift now. Season 5 is just involving even more. Season 4, there was a shift to involve more. Season 3, there was a shift to involve more. And it's just like progressed to that because that's what it's all about. It's about you in your day-to-day life, going through it, being willing to remain uncertain despite how uncomfortable that may be, and the willingness even just on these calls, like these are opportunities too, the free groups are opportunities too, to face something that you're uncomfortable with. You're not quite sure how it's going to go, what it's going to look like, and we stopped trying to figure out how anything's going to go because there's a number of calls and episodes. If we were trying to prepare for everyone, we'd just be doubling our workload for no good reason because they basically never go how we think they're going to go, if we even think, so much so that we just stop trying to think of any way that they're going to go and just step into it and find out. Exactly, because that's what it's all about, the willingness to do so and figure it out as you go. But that's all I got for now.
I want to say one quick thing before we pass it to Jazz, and it's just that not only are season 1 and season 2 useful, but I'm quite happy with episode 1 of season 5. I got to say, that was just so much fun to record. It was great to be able to take the stance of somebody who's just trying to get familiar with the conversation, with your viewpoint as a whole, what you're trying to communicate. That was great because it was all stuff that, again, and I communicated this to you, I wouldn't have asked you necessarily before the first retreat, because there was a difference after the retreat. It went from being, oh yeah, no, I kind of get these concepts and these ideas. Yeah, this is kind of fun. And then all of a sudden it just hits you all in the face and you're just like, oh, that's it. And so it was great because there wasn't a single point in that conversation where I thought to myself, I don't know if he can answer this one. There wasn't a single point. I'm just like, I wonder how he'll answer this one. And so that was a lot of fun. So anybody who hasn't, if you want a brief refresher on everything that we're talking about, or if you just want an introduction to this conversation that's a little bit more organized than episode 1 of season 1, do check out episode 1 of season 5, Rescratching the Surface. I was very happy with it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now I'll shut up and pass it to Jazz. Jazz.
Hey guys, just like Marie, I wasn't watching season 1 or season 2. I jumped straight into season 3 or 4, season 4, I think, or no, season 3. And I was just like straight into it. I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. I'm just listening to the newest episodes, especially because they were labeled. So that helped as well get me into topics that I was super interested in. But lately I've been making my way through season 1. So I'm like partway through season 1 at the moment. And I also wanted to watch the newest season's episode today. Last night I was thinking about how I'll watch the episode before today's roundtable. And once I got up, I was like, fuck, I would really love to learn how to do a handstand. And so I like, I've never done a handstand before in my life. It was a struggle. My shoulders were hurting a lot, but it was fun. And I really enjoyed the experience. And I'm probably going to try and do that again. But yeah, it's so interesting how much reality shifts when you don't have expectations of how things will go and what kind of assumptions you're making about how things will go. And so you just end up in places like doing a fucking handstand and you just had no idea how you got there. You're just like upside down. And you're like, how did I get here? And it's been the theme a lot lately for the past weekend as well. And yeah, just the past weekend, it's been quite the theme of recognizing how much reality shifts and what kind of experiences can be had when I'm not so caught up in ideas of where I need to be or where I should be. Yesterday, I was talking to Mark about this, about how I was so tired in the morning. I was in bed for our Patreon call, as some of you may have noticed, and I was questioning why I was so tired. And so I was just like, whatever, we'll see, right? And at the time, I really wanted to go to the gym, but I wasn't feeling like it. And maybe that's part of why I was feeling so tired, is because maybe I felt like I really want to, but it's clearly not happening. So like, why force it? There's a billion other things I could be doing. So I napped and I got back up. I was like, I'm still not feeling it. So I just did whatever the hell else I wanted to do, which was clean the apartment because it was a mess for the weekend. And all of a sudden I was like, I would really love to go to the gym right now. And it was like 8 p.m., like night. I don't normally end up at the gym at night, but I was at the gym last night, and it was really fun. I also got high. It was my first time doing a workout high. So that was an experience as well, which was really interesting and fun. I didn't get to do my full workout because the gym closed before I was able to, but it's interesting how many new places I end up in that I haven't been in before when I have no idea what's gonna happen. Even 2 seconds from now, really. Like I didn't even know I was gonna talk about this until I started talking about this. But one thing I wanted to talk about, unless you guys had anything to say to this, was I was thinking about the process of thought. Because before I got into this conversation, I would go to these group meditations. I mean, I still sometimes go to the group meditations, but I was going regularly, and there would be these insight meditations where we would sit in a place of stillness, and the teacher would pose us a question. For example, what do you want to let go of, or what do you want to do? What do you want to beckon into your life for the new year, for example? Like, what are you wanting to accomplish or whatever? And then you just sit, you don't think about it, but some thoughts happen to you, like thoughts come, and then you just write down whatever thoughts are coming. And I found that process really interesting because it did, I don't know, shine some light on where my mind was heading or what was happening. But now I'm starting to feel like it was pretty bullshit. I don't know. Like the mind is always saying a bunch of shit. So like I was thinking about creativity at the time, but like my thoughts about creativity, which is like expressing it at the time, expressing it through makeup and stuff, which is still fine. Like I'm still doing that, but creativity is happening all the fucking time. My hands moving this way is being creative. And so or me saying these words is creativity. And so like I don't know, it feels like thoughts are having less and less of a place in my life, where it's just like background noise, like Ray has often said. And so I'm just curious about if there's any time you guys feel like there is. I mean, for example, like if someone says, what's 2 + 2, then you go into your mind and you're like, 2 + 2 is 4. So you're thinking. But I'm curious if there's like other times where you guys are consciously looking at the process of thought. Yeah, curious about your guys' thoughts on that.
Often, it's funny, there's a word for it, metacognition. I talk about it in Discover Transcendence. If anybody hasn't watched that and you're listening, go and check out Discover Transcendence. It's a 48-minute video on YouTube that I made back in 2018. It's got a bunch of like stock video clips and some inspirational music. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, I covered some stuff in that video, and that was very much part of it. I'm going to pass it to Andrew.
Yeah, I would say definitely. And even thinking about it now, it's interesting because like it is the processing that you're watching, and we get involved, we start taking ownership, and it's like it's there, and we just start paying closer attention to it, and that leads to the concern. But if we recognize that it doesn't necessarily mean something about us so much, it's easier to not take it so seriously. But when you go quote unquote into your mind, or your perception of, your thoughts and whatnot, it's like that's what's always there. So the shift isn't the mind quieting, the shift is your focus and your concern regarding it, and your resistance to it settling upon a certainty that it shouldn't be happening, as opposed to recognizing that it's just a processing machine. Like yesterday, I hoping to get this video edited soon. I ran on a gram of mushrooms, and I ended up running like 9.5 miles. And the first like 6 or 7, I'm talking. I wanted to talk about identity and like, what you are. And I basically I'm going to run on mushrooms as the hook to get people interested enough in paying attention to a video like that. But in my mind, like in between what I was saying on camera, I was going through all of this processing, like wondering what the fuck was going on. And like it was, and I was on mushrooms, and yet there was a lot of concern. And eventually it like started to unfold in front of me, and realizing where it was coming from, something that I wasn't looking at because it was uncomfortable to look at. It like kind of forced me to look at it, and I was going through it. And so all along I was like, what the fuck is this process happening right now? Trying to figure it out. And eventually it just kind of unfolded in front of me, and I was like, oh shit, that's what it was. Yep. And so my point is that whether you're paying super close attention to it or not, it is the processing unfolding, and it isn't necessary to pay super close attention to it when it arises. Like, it's whether or not you get overly concerned with it's settling a lot of certainty that like it shouldn't be happening. It means something about you and all of those things. So long story short, yes, I definitely deal with going into trying to sift through what the hell's going on in there. Sometimes it's definitely less frequent, but it absolutely still happens.
Oh God, I just want to throw in sometimes. Jesus Christ, like it's always happening. It's always happening. We're always processing so much. Like the entirety of everything you've ever been is always being processed by you, because it's all affecting everything. It's one of the reasons I like the Mayan long count calendar. We've talked about this before, how they're discussing existence, how it goes in different stages, but all of the stages that follow the original stage are built on that stage. Like they're still happening at the same time, right? And so the same is true with us. Like we learned a bunch of stuff when we were toddlers. Those lessons are still being learned and reinforced, and we're just not aware of them. You know, this is why in vulnerable relationships, all of our triggers come up from our childhood, you know, because we still haven't learned those processes. We still haven't learned those lessons, because what is it talking about? Vulnerability, compassion, empathy, being able to be in the moment, letting go of your narrative. It's all the same lesson that we learned as kids. It's just more so. And we have a bunch of shit piled on top, so we have no sensitivity to it whatsoever. And so it's interesting, and this is something I was thinking about when Ben was talking earlier about being a deep thinker. There have been so many times in my life where I've thought that's the case, and then recognized, holy fuck, there's so much more. And it's just finally you end up recognizing like, oh, there's more than I could even fathom. Like I couldn't possibly even sit here and want to pick through it all consciously, because I would immediately go towards the shit I'm okay with and away from the shit I don't want to deal with. Like there's no way for me to go through it without fucking it up. So I actually have to sit back and just let it process, or I'm getting in the way of it processing. Like I'm actually putting a bottleneck in it, like it's an hourglass. I'm making it more difficult for the process to happen by getting in there and exercising my preferences. But when I'm not doing that, I'm processing it all. I'm processing it all the way down to the lessons I started learning when I could just learn how to walk and trust the person that was helping me walk. You know, so there's a lot of stuff in there. I just want to throw that in there, that deep thinking continues to change meaning for me.
Ben?
Yeah. Before we pass it to Ben,
Or
I just
Jazz.
wanted to say, that something happened a couple of days ago where I was on the couch just thinking, getting into the process of thinking, and I was just like, oh, but I don't want to go to bed. And I was like, wait, why don't I want to go to bed? I'm clearly tired. And so I was like, because I don't want the night to end. I want to do something. And so I was like, why do I want to do something? Why can't I just go to bed? And I didn't have an answer to that. And so normally before, what I would do is like, I would try to figure it out, like piece the puzzle pieces, like try to figure out what puzzle pieces go together into what is making me want to keep the night going and not just sleep. But now I've just let it go. I'm not entirely sure what's happening, but I just went to fucking bed. So, and I'll just see what process that unfolds into and see what happens, because it's still happening, you know. It's still like I've recognized it, so it's the process is just gonna happen, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Always unfolding. Ben?
Yeah, just right there, Jazz, like you never know when that tied up pretzel will untie, or the knot will untie itself, and you're like, oh shit, that's what it was. And it's kind of like, it kind of goes back to what Andrew was talking about when he was running on shrooms, and he was just kind of sitting in a cloud, kind of like of confusion. And that just, it's just, that resonated with me a lot, because most of my shroom trips are like, I'm starting off in mud and just in it, working, trying my best to stay there, and just knowing that it's temporary. And like, if you resist it, you're gonna get sink deeper into the murkiness. So just stay, at the level where you're at. Let the process unfold, and like literally without fail, like my shroom trips are, I'm in this cloud of confusion, and the idea of me is like, sit right in front of me, like I can, it's almost tangible, and I'm circling around it. And it, and like after a certain, like, it's like a shimmering piece of gold falls from the void, and it's just like a simple thought, and then you're like, oh wow, that's cool. And then you, for some reason I can't explain it, it just becomes all clear, and you're out of the mud, and you have this like insane insight, and it's like, holy fuck, that's what it was. Like, that was the process. Oh shit. That's just my personal anecdote. And the one thing I wanted to talk about with the process of thought, I was actually just thinking about this on my way home from work today, about thinking about thoughts. And this image came into my mind that, okay, you're in a factory, and your brain is this insanely complex machine in the factory that's at some perceived amount of time spits out a thought, and you're right there in front of the machine. It's like this huge complex contraption, and at the end of it is just this tray table, and the machine produces the thought. And you have a choice when you see that. You're like, you can think, oh, I recognize that thought, and you can say, I'm going to attach to it, and I'm going to assign meaning to that thought, and it's going to mean something about me. And that's kind of how you were trained to think, is to attach meaning to the products of the machine of your brain. And that's kind of what is like the source of the suffering of those thoughts. So what you can do is go back to that choice, because, okay, and you can try to like stop the machine and like rattle it and try to like just shut it off, but it's never, you have to recognize that your brain's never going to stop producing thoughts. As long as you're here, just it's an organ, just as your heart beats, you can't control that. Your brain is going to produce thoughts. So it's always going to spit out something. So you just have a choice. Are you going to attach to it, or can you recognize the machine and see yourself observing what it's doing, and it'll bring you a thought, and you'll say, nope, that's what you just produced. I'm not going to take that. And you may think like, okay, but if I don't attach to it, that makes me really uncomfortable, and like the machine's going to get mad at me. But then the machine also doesn't have feelings, and it's not going to get mad at you for not taking it. It doesn't care whether you attach to your thoughts or not. It's still going to produce thoughts. So if you make the choice to say, I see what you produced, and I'm not going to participate in that, then maybe you can step away from the machine. You can take a break and stop focusing so much on it, and realize that there's other stuff in the factory to maybe put your attention towards. And you practice that for long enough, and you realize that you are the factory, and that you can step out of the door and realize that the factory was just another vessel for the production of thoughts, and you can explore what's outside the factory. That's it.
No, well said, dude. And it's all based on the underlying assumption that you can know yourself, that any of those thoughts could ever possibly mean anything about you. And I think sometimes what gets us caught is, one of those thoughts gets spit out that we don't mind so much. Someone thinks of us in a certain way, and we're like, okay, I kind of like that one. And so it's investing in our assumption that anything that machine produces means anything about us. And it's not, it's like it's always there. Like, that's one of the bases of our experience, is that, like, that machine of the desire for certainty. It craves certainty. It tries to settle upon certainties because that's the mechanism of it. And I think initially, especially, just that process of questioning, that process of recognizing that any of those thoughts that come up are never mean anything about you. They're never actually could come close to expressing you, explaining you, describing you. Like, it's impossible to do so adequately. And over enough time, enough reps of doing that, eventually there's just less things that you even subtly attach to based on that assumption that you could know yourself, that any of those ideas could explain you. And then it's not even so much of this process of like seeing them come out and choosing one way or the other, but it's just like it almost quiets down to the point that you forget that it's back there until something comes up that does feel very serious or impactful. And then that's when, the work happens. We can get caught in that, but it's just that process, that continued process of being willing to be uncertain about it, like positive or negative. We're always avoiding that uncertainty, that state of uncertainty, that rawness. But that's where we always are. And we just try to create a temporary cessation of that uncertainty and the discomfort that comes with it through attaching to a certainty, thinking that it could ever describe us. And eventually that machine doesn't have quite the weight anymore, especially once you recognize more and more clearly the reality of what you are, which is only through recognizing everything that you're not, for the most part. Jason.
Yeah, so I raised my hand a while ago. I forgot what the original thing was, but I feel like as soon as I just started thinking about like the act of listening, like actually hearing another person and seeing like from what perspective they're coming from, and also like what they're actually pointing at. Because like we are always using, like we're using these concepts and stuff, but to point back to an experience, to point back to like the reality of what the label was stamped on, this label on this, like when I'm talking about it, are you just seeing the idea of it, or are you trying to, but then again, it's like, can you really see it anyways? But before I get into that, like just the whole act, like if I'm taking my thoughts, my habitual thought processes, my habitual story, the story of who I think I am, if I'm taking that to be truth of what I am, I can't, that's all I hear. When another person is talking, I'm just hearing, it's like you just start sounding like Charlie Brown, just and it's like all I hear is my own personal story, which is just that heaviness, But yeah, so I wanted to maybe dive into that. I also had some other things that I wrote down. Oh, just that whole uncertainty to that's like the biggest, like that lack of concern is allowing like that whole stream of conceptual stuff, like that whole beast, just allowing all of that to be, because as soon as you want to hold on to like one of them, the thoughts, they're endless. There's like an endless amount of concepts that we can create. There's like an endless amount of ideas that we can see. So being in like that creative state is when you lack that whole narrative, that whole conceptual, because now you're able to use those concepts to create different things. I'm honestly just going all over the place. Just going all over the place. There's so many different insights. Being in a conversation like this, it's just you get flooded. So normally if I'm having like, 10 insights per hour, all of a sudden I'm getting flooded with like 100 insights in 10 minutes type of thing. So just being here with you guys it's crazy. But I'm gonna pass it on because don't remember what I originally was going to say. And I'm just down to keep sitting in these insights. So as we, continue to look at it together, maybe some more things will come up. But for now, I'm going to pass the mic.
Fair enough. I got to say, I get excited every time somebody says, I don't remember why I raised my hand, because whatever's going to come next is fucking raw. It's right there. It's absolutely what you're processing at the time. It's not rehearsed, because that's the problem. Like if you don't get to respond right away with the insight that you had, or that you had, it's just your insight, which means it just settles into you. You can't get to tell, you don't get to tell us, but it means it leads to another insight. And I'm curious as shit about that one, right? Because there's less context for it. All of a sudden, it's its own insight. Now I have to chew on that. And what's funny is that by the time you're finished communicating it, I might raise my hand and then forget why I did so.
Yeah, and that what you were saying about seeing other people and kind of seeing that reflected in the act of listening, like we really are just seeing everyone how we see ourselves. So if we're seeing someone else talk and we're so caught up in our narrative, in our story, we're not ever really seeing them for what they are. Like we're always seeing them how we see ourselves. And so if we're seeing ourselves without so much story and without so much narrative, we can actually start hearing them, and they're not this conceptual idea so much anymore. So it's always that reflection, like whether you recognize it or not, you're always interacting with yourself. It's basically just how you perceive yourself. Are you a concept? Are you an idea? Are you a story? Or are you what is here and now? And that's going to be reflected back to you based on it. All just stems from you and your perception of yourself, and it's all a reflection. So you're always literally interacting with yourself. But if you are a conceptual idea, you are always interacting with that conceptual idea and passing the buck onto other people and giving, using them as an excuse to not face the things you're unwilling to face in yourself. So it's always like we're always learning from ourselves, whether we recognize it or not, through other people, whether we're using them as an excuse or an opportunity to learn more about ourselves. And so it really does, again, just come back to how we see ourselves. And that's why it's so important in this conversation to be willing to look at that. Like I really see that as the door to this, is your perception of yourself and your willingness to be uncertain about that, because that opens up the door to being uncertain about everything else in reality and just seeing where that fucking goes, because that's freedom. Uncertainty and freedom always go hand in hand, and it's just can be uncomfortable at first is all. So Jason, have you got anything, or we can pass the chat?
I didn't up until you said the last thing you said.
Fair enough.
Because that resistance right there, because it's when you rely so heavily on the thoughts. It's like I'm stepping into this situation, whether it be I'm going on this date, me, Jason, going on this idea of what a date comes with this limited idea I have of the person I'm going on a date with, or same thing with job interviews or anything like that. Lost my train of thought.
About the narratives, the certainty, clinging to the certainty outside of ourselves, being willing to be uncertain about yourself.
Oh yes. Okay, the uncomfortableness that we can resist because we build this whole idea of what it is that we're going to experience. But really that's just the thought, which is so limited, which is so like it doesn't compare to actual reality because it's just limited labels. So living in that and trying to prepare for that, as soon as you step into the actual situation itself, you're gonna be caught off guard because you were expecting this limited idea of what was going to happen, and it's never the reality of it. So like we're tiring ourselves out. I know I constantly do it too, even now today even. uh it's a moment thing, like literally this moment right here I can get caught up in my head. I can think that this thought that I had about me, this habitual, it's familiar, it's comfortable. Okay, boom, I'm gonna live it through. I'm gonna see it through that lens. And then you it's just a mind fuck. And then you get to a certain point where it's like I'm just gonna stop mentally preparing myself for anything. I don't know, the uncertainty is super uncomfortable, but like I said before, if you could just not resist that, if you can allow your sense of self to just dissolve in the sensation of your existence, like from that point right there, it's like now you're in it and you're not in that thought. You're not just experiencing that limited thought. So that's pretty much, now you're actually thrown into it. So that freedom is where that uncertainty is, where the uncomfort, all of that is. And that could sound like scary, but once again, it's not what you think it is. So just keep like sinking into that, letting those things go. I noticed for me it's literally a moment to moment thing. Before, when I couldn't finish, or the few moments where I couldn't finish here, I could build up this whole story, and I have, and it's there. It's there. This story that I've had all these concussions and it affects my attention. This, that, and the third, this, that, and the third. I haven't felt the same since whatever. And let that define me. But the fact of the matter is, am I going to let that stop me from living the reality? Me being so caught up in the story that takes me away from attentive of my experience. Am I going to continue making that the priority, knowing what it results in? It's like, no, it's never the priority. So no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm with, even if I am seeing somebody as separate, the priority is the experience, and it's not the thoughts that I experience, but the direct experience. Because we say, okay, yes, to you it may work out this way, and for me it may work out that way. But there's no there's one truth, but it's just perceived from different viewpoints. So us talking about it with our limited ideas don't really, like, let's just be in it. Let's just be in it. That kind of reminds me of like the first time that I was on the Patreon call. I got on and immediately I thought, I was trying to figure out what it was that I was supposed to talk about, or what it was, figure out the flow without being in the flow, pretty much. Trying to figure out the flow without being in the flow. But then just continuing on, I came to that realization where it's like, thoughts are not reality. So trying to rely on these thoughts, or thinking that saying these certain things means something about me, is pointless, and it's mundane, and it's unfulfilling, and it's stressful, and it's heavy. So what do you do then? Just let go of that resistance. Resistance, and you can even feel it physically. You can feel the resistance, and when you're having anxiety, and when you're having those intrusive thoughts, and you're taking them as truth, each one, and you're getting flooded with all these narratives. All it takes is for you to not resist that resistance. Don't resist the resistance, and eventually that resistance, it kind of just will start to like unfold on its own, and it always does. So at this point, it's like I really have nothing to worry about at all. And just 2 weeks ago, I something triggered something that happened in my past and it had to do with relationships. And I built up this whole idea of this third person that literally was based off of my limited experience around that person. And I was able to create a whole narrative. And it was so convenient because, oh yeah, I'm figuring it out. No, you're just making that shit up as you go and taking it to be the truth and living that out and just fucking spreading chaos, you know, and that goes for everything. That makes me think about everything to you know, perversion, to anxiety, to paranoia, all these different things. It all just comes down to, like you said the other day, like it comes down to what you're seeing, but also how much of a lack of preference can you have of what you're seeing, lack of concern of what you're seeing. So I could be saying some crazy ass thoughts, and we all do from time to time. We have some, because it's one collective, you know. So we can, there's certain thoughts that I have that I may think only I had, but you had them. A lot of them have had, a lot of people have had them or haven't. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, when those things are just playing in the background, they're no longer the priority. It just doesn't matter. And I just keep coming around in circles, and that's the way it is. You do keep coming around full circle. You do. Because it's not that you were trying to, it's not that you want to figure out yourself. Okay, it's not that you want to seek something. It seems like you're on a journey, but really the journey is just to yourself, but not the idea of yourself, but the reality of yourself. And so it just comes around full circle back to that, you know, what's your priority?
So absolutely. I'm going to pass this to Mark, who I'm going to get to follow up on that thought. Hi, Mark. Yeah, you're not getting away, sir. It's good to have you back, as always.
Thank you. Good evening. I've had a lot of thoughts. This is flowing through my head a lot this weekend. So I was just going to share a few things on the subject. First thing is, one thing I'm appreciative that I went through over the last, I would say, 10 years is that before I realized any of this, one thing I realized at some point 10 years ago, although I didn't realize that I wasn't my thoughts, I did realize that myself reacting to my thoughts was causing a lot of things in my life that I didn't feel like really resonated with who I really wanted to be. And so I went on a very long trek of different avenues or whatever. But what I was doing during that time and what I was practicing was what has proven to be an invaluable thing. And of course, I believe that was part of what led me here. But it was being able to cultivate that space between thought and action to really finally get to a point. And it took a long time. As I said, probably because I was on all kinds of paths and I really had no idea where I was going at the time. But I still, I was working on it, so that's all that mattered. But trying to get to a place where I was responding instead of reacting, which I've heard that mentioned several different places. As an idea, if you react, it's on the spur of the moment. You're just, kind of from, the way my thoughts work now, or my frame of reference now, it's the ego just reacting, being defensive, doing whatever to protect itself. But responding is more of a, let me see, let me take a minute, let's just say, space between, just space before I respond. And that gives an opportunity to not just react from the ego, or at least that's how I've kind of been perceiving, what I did all that time. And it really helped me over that amount of time start actually creating that space. So at the point where I started finally realized, oh shit, I don't even know. A lot of these, I don't even need the space to ponder a reaction. It's just a bunch of bullshit to begin with, which was great. That was about 6 months ago. So since that point, and especially the last several months, and of course, the retreat put a gas pedal on it, which was great. But one, I've really been able to tell a difference now, or I feel like there's a difference between, obviously things go through my head all the time. They always will and always do. And of course, I've experienced a decrease in volume and intensity of certain thoughts that I'm no longer giving merit to. And it's been very significant for me, which has been great. And I'm very, very happy about that. But I can kind of, when I notice, when I'm kind of noticing what's going through my head, I feel like I can feel a difference between those ego thoughts that I'm kind of like, if I put, you don't really notice you're doing it, but if I put effort into going through something in my head, if I'm like really like, I'm thinking about this and I'm dissecting it and I'm splitting it up a million different ways in my head, that feels different than when things just go through my head, kind of like I'm picking up on them. And I would frame that in the form of, insights or other kinds of thoughts that I think are separate. I know my ego generates a lot of insecurity and those type of things. But other things I'm not so sure come from the ego. I kind of think, we've talked about this several times that, if you're open, there's all kinds of things out there in the collective consciousness that you can kind of, dip your ear in and it flies through, if you're in the right space. So that's another thing that I've kind of been noticing lately is I feel like I can kind of tell. And if I start to feel like I'm expending energy on it, I need to stop because again, that brings me back to another thing that I learned and especially became extremely clear to me at the retreat. And I have mentioned this several times in different places, whether it be Discord or a Patreon call. I'll never forget, I did go through a significant experience near the beginning of the retreat. And normally what I would do would be dissect the hell out of it. But the advice I received was, it'll work itself out. And I thought, I'm going to listen to that. And I didn't try to do it because, as I said, I'm kind of being able to notice if I'm actually expending energy in my head to create thoughts or divide them further or whatnot. And I didn't. And it did work itself out. And I've continued to experience that. So since then, I'm not saying things don't go through my head all the time. They do, but I just kind of, the fact that I have really worked on creating that space when I see a thought, that I don't immediately go somewhere with it or do something, in reaction to it. I really am feeling, that I'm able to stand back and watch and not get carried away too easily. Now I'll say that, there are always exceptions. Sunday night, I went out with some friends, which is not something I do very often. I stay at the house, but I did go out with some friends for a bit. And of course, I'm back in that same old scenario. There's nobody I'm hanging around with that I could even mention a word of this to, probably, so I don't. But, someone said something that honestly really hurt me and was very personal, actually. I don't think they intended for me to take it the way that I received it. But it did, it did, I saw it bothering me, let's say that, and I was able to communicate with Jazz afterwards for a bit, but I went through a process for about an hour while I was sitting and watching, and I was just sitting in it. And, and then I would notice part of my mind was trying to go down that route that I would have went to maybe a year ago. A very, very deep, dark place where I'll go through the process in my head and I would validate every bad thing I thought about myself. I would validate, I knew all these people didn't like me and blah, blah, blah. And I would just validate all that. And I'm not going back out. I'm not doing this and fuck these people. And, but I did it, I sat there and I was watching it, and I knew it was kind of like you're trying to start a lawnmower and it revs up and then it dies down. And I kept hearing that, and I was like, I don't want to. And I wasn't even going to talk to anybody about it at first, because that's not what I normally do. And then I was like, Jazz and I were messaging, so I did mention it to her, and we talked about it for a minute. Not real deep or anything, just kind of the situation I was in, not the details of the comment, which were who cares, but how I was feeling and how I was, kind of sitting here like, okay, I could very easily jump off that cliff. I always have, but I'm very happy that I'm able to stand here before I fell off the cliff, because most of the time it was unconscious. And so I was able to look at that cliff, and I was still standing there, and I was like, no, I know this reminds me of all that, but I don't want to do that same crap. And I'm not, I don't want to. And of course, Jazz was just being great by listening and just saying, we could talk if you want, it's fine, whatever you need. And I really appreciated that so much. So, but, I was able to kind of fairly quickly just be like, I'm not going to do it. I don't need to dissect it. Yeah, that was annoying, but it is what it is. But then also, there were several things that came to me this weekend. One of them, or I think if I combine them both together, it kind of comes down to, and Jason, I'm losing my train of thought here. So there you go. We all do it every 5 minutes. But really, I reminded myself of something I had thought of 2 nights earlier when I had an amazing trip. And that is, again, and it's what I've been trying to do for months, anyway, is, whatever's happening in your mind, just, it's there, I know it, but I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to take action. I'm going to do stuff. I'm still going to do stuff. Whatever's going on, I'm just going to do what I would normally do. I'm not going to let those thoughts change anything or hold me back, or say I'm never going to do this, or I'm going to leave this group and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to keep doing. I know the thoughts are there. They're going to come back. They're going to do all this, but I'm very happy. I'm, at this point, most of the time able to stand there and be like, yeah, I see you. I don't think I'm going to do that. And, but the big key is, if I'm sitting in that, then I need to do something. I'm going to do something. I'm not going to sit there and allow that space for those thoughts to be tore up and dissected. So I was glad that I opened up to Jazz, and I was glad that I did something as opposed to what I normally would have done, which was just go back into my head and stay there. And it was really, really a good experience for me, to reinforce, to continue to reinforce, how I'm approaching my existence right now. So, that may be it. I'm trying to think. It seems like there was one other thing, but I'm not sure. But I really am, I think there's a difference. And I think one of the biggest keys was, if I'm putting effort into these thoughts, if I'm actually being like, okay, let me sit here and do this thinking, then for me, that's not really being very, it's just not where, that's not what I'm doing better if I just like, okay, I see that stuff, let me go do some stuff. And I think that brings me back to here right now. And anytime I'm here right now, I can't live in my head. It's impossible. So that was my big message over the weekend. One, to act and do. And when I do feel like my head's taking over, see it, but no, I'm going to act. I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to do stuff that keeps me in the moment. Because I can't think if I'm doing that. I can't live in my head if I'm doing that. And 2, the fact that happened on Sunday night, at first I was mad, and then I was hurt, and then, I worked through that a little bit, and then I was like, wait a minute. That happened because, that's still something I need to work out at some point. Not manually, no, not manually, but that was just, hey, you put yourself out there, which is where we apply all these things. If you're not sitting at home 24/7, this is going to happen, but that's where we apply these things. And that's how I will be further revealed to me, the kind of things that maybe I still, are up there and need to work themselves out. I feel pretty good 99.99% of the time, but I know that I'm not all 100% clean here. And there's no, not ever going to be any pendulum swings or whatnot. But, you know, I shifted my perspective of that to such a place as those swings are not me going backwards or falling into something I don't want to be. That's proof, one, that I'm out there experiencing, and two, those are opportunities for me. And it turned around everything, or all of my perspective about that situation Sunday night. That was an opportunity for me to still see and make visible, which I knew that I still have those insecurities. Of course I do. I can still be hurt. But it gives me more things to be like, I'll keep on the lookout to see how this unfolds, because I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to stop or say I'm not going to go out with these people or do this thing because of this. So as long as I keep going forward, it will work itself out. And I'm going to just, as long as I'm doing my part to get out here and experience and be in the moment, I'll allow that to happen. And as I said, I believe it will happen on its own. I don't need to make it happen because that was proven to me already. So that's enough, but that's what was in my head about thoughts.
Oh, fuck, look out. That's great. Honestly, I just go on it. I want to go and tackle a fucking challenge right now. I don't want to sit here just talking about it. I just want to go and fucking take down a wall or something. That was awesome, Mark. I really look forward to seeing you at the next retreat. And as always, it's nice to hear this experience that you're having. And I'm going to specifically pick on you, Mark, because it's been just so fucking fast of a transition. I met you in what, November? I think it was late November. And at that point, the most useful thing that Andrew and I could do in any way in the conversation was to show you that we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And it's just so nice that you not just took in the lesson that we don't know what the fuck we're doing, you embraced it as not needing to know what the fuck you're doing. And it's so freeing. And every time I hear you talk, I actually referenced you in a recent episode. I don't know if you caught that, but it's just because of the leaps and bounds that you've been making in your own life. And it's because, as everybody here has expressed, priority. It's because it's a priority. It's not because you should, or it'd be nice, you know, oh, enlightenment and all that shit. It's not about any of that. It's just that I'm done fucking suffering because of this stupid shit. Because that's all it is. Once you recognize it's just stupid shit, you're just like, oh, I can stop that. You know, and that's why I often joke that in my moment of waking up to that, it was like I walked into a door that had been standing in front of me the whole fucking time, like bang. I'm like, oh fuck, it's like right there, right? And I had just been walking around it for years, not recognizing it's right fucking there. And it was because I didn't want to see it. I was still invested in everything but the door. And so I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, super well said. Always love when you share, Mark. And this kind of goes to one of Jason's points, but you brought it up as well, is we have this idea of going through the process of questioning things, the experience, the coming to what you are, and we think of it as this fucking straight trajectory. Like I should just be continuously making progressive progress each and every day, and it should look like this, and it should be structured. And the whole time it's like this. So you could be right around, like right on the end of a bend coming back, and you're judging like, I thought I've already been here, and then it goes up and then it comes back down, but it's not quite as low the next time, but you're still judging it relative to the last time you were up here. And we think that it's like this fucking straight thing because we love the idea of it just being that, like there is no fluctuations, but that's what it is. We need those to come back to those dips to see what we're still not looking at, because it's easy to continue to go through it when you're feeling great, when you're not holding on to so many things. But then, you know, the shit's going to come around. It's just going to show you what's already there. So it's all just opportunities to continue to work on it. It's not about not having those experiences anymore. It's because if you were to hypothetically get to a point where you didn't have so many of those experiences, you kind of start doing shit to get back into those experiences. Because if you're just riding that all the time, it becomes something else, and it's a different sort of experience. And it's just those highs and lows. The discomfort is inevitable. And if you just start avoiding the discomfort and not being willing to face it, or thinking that peak is not having discomfort, it's like, it's going to take a very, very, millions and trillions of years to get to a point where you've experienced so much that there isn't so much discomfort. Like in our lifetimes, there's going to be so much opportunity for discomfort, which is just an opportunity to learn something more about yourself. But that discomfort is always that first step. So it's like, it's I don't know, it's not something to be avoided anymore so much especially once you recognize the reality of what you are and what you're sitting in and where you're at in eternity. It's like fucking might as well step into some discomfort and not let it get you down, but it still will always have a weight to a degree, but it's just how seriously you take that weight. And as long as you keep stepping through it, that's all it is. And it's fucking awesome to see you do it time and time again. So appreciate you sharing, Mark, as always. Pass to Amanda.
Oh my God, that was amazing. That was incredible. Thank you so much, Mark. And listening to everyone today, and especially listening to Mark right now, and he's got a hat with a leaf on it, and then he's got a tree behind him. And so I'm imagining, I feel like he was so let me rewind real quick. I saw the season 5, episode 1 today twice. During the second time, the analogy of us being the leaves, but also the tree, and experiencing the tree and the leaf, and then to really feel that analogy as it was being expressed, and then feeling like the tree and the leaf as I'm watching Mark with like an actual like leaf on his hat with the tree behind him. And so I was like, oh man, he's the leaf in the sun, I'm the leaf in the shade, but I can feel the sun, I can feel the whole tree, I can feel everything. And what was so interesting about today is just the insight that I've been having is, you just can't hide your priorities. You can't hide what tree that you water. As much as I want to say, I am always here, I am usually busy. If I'm honest with my character, I am usually busy. So hearing Mark talk about like, taking action is his way of expressing being reality. I'm like, not taking action is my way of experiencing reality, because I spend so much doing, not being. So I don't really need, in my own experience, to pursue doing more or examining how I'm doing more so than doing more is, I guess, the way that I experience it. Because I kept asking myself today, what am I resisting? And it's like that there's nothing to do, that there really is nothing for me to do but be here, but be this full experience. And as much as I wanted to tell myself that I prioritize being here, I did everything but be here. So I was watering the tree of division, saying that I'm watering this tree of unity, when clearly one tree was massive. And that's the one that I was giving my most of time and attention to, but I just couldn't admit to myself where my priorities were, where was my attention? And, today has just shown me in so many ways that, just check the height of the tree. You want to say that you're doing one thing. Why don't you take a look around? What trees do you see around you? What does your life look like? Not just what do you want it to be? How does it compare to others? But damn, what fucking tree am I standing in front of? And it certainly was not the tree that I told myself I was standing in front of today. So it was just so much like, you can't hide your priorities. You just can't hide the trees that you're watering. And listening to Mark talking about that made me just, listening to everyone, listening to Jason and Jazz and Ben and listening to you guys today rocked me in many ways. And I'm very glad for it, because I wasn't experiencing today trying to not resist. It was just, let's take a look to see, what are we actually doing? What am I actually here? Because what led to this thought that I've been playing with all day was the fact that I don't remember my dreams. And I had heard someone say, like, you might not remember your dreams because you're not really here. Because usually you take your day and then you process your day in the dream. But I don't remember my dreams, and I haven't remembered the dreams for years. And I'm like, damn, so are we just not really here? I mean, we're always here. We're always in the flow. And I get that. But it isn't. The evidence might be saying that we're not really always in the experience of being here. And then that just led to just admitting that I'm always busy. I'm always looking for something to do because it's always a way to attach to the goal, attach to the process, attach to the thing that you're doing. When I couldn't sit down and just be the uncertainty that I was, I had to. So I love linear straight lines. I love that shit. I love A to B to C to D. Excellent. You want something done? Let's get some shit done. But that's not all that there is. So not doing something was so foreign. I wanted to reject it in so many ways, and have for however long, and then thinking about that it's all of us, and we've all been, and just seeing so many different examples of myself as a tree, as the leaves, in the sun, out of the sun. No matter what I'm doing, it's always running from just being what I am, what is just always uncertain. I'm, no matter what I do, no matter how many things I check, no matter how many boxes I tick, there's never getting rid of the uncertainty of just being here, and just being okay with that, because there's nothing that I have to do. There's nothing that I need to get. There's nowhere that I have to go. It's just being here and swimming in that, being that, getting lost in it, finding myself drowning in it, engulfing in it, coming back to it, and no matter how many times I may go under the water, the air is there, whether I can feel it or not. So it's just checking, regardless of what I say, regardless of what people tell me I'm doing, what am I actually doing? What tree am I actually watering? What are we actually, where is it? Because as much as I in society, we like to say that we're doing the right thing, are we? And what is that? And that changes. So it can't just always be a fixed answer. So I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not even looking for the question. I'm just here.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. It's not very comfortable to recognize that, cling to one side and think that that's it, and take a step back and be like, oh, am I avoiding something? Oh, is there something I'm not quite looking at? Because it's always the balance. Like we so badly want there to just be that silver bullet, just that answer. I just have to do this and then it'll be good. And there's always the duality of the experience. And it's not just about running in one direction or even in one way. It's like there's a variability to the ways in which you can run as well. And as we attach to one sort of way of being, one sort of experience, we're just limiting our own experience is really all that we're doing. We're actually able to limit the vastness of what we are. Like we're that, as Ray said many times, we're that limitless, then that we can create limitations for ourselves despite not being limited. Like it's that crazy. And so coming to that realization is not super comfortable. I came to a realization too, just some shit I was holding on to, and I was just like, shit, oh damn, I really was doing that, oh no. But then it's that ability to see it for what it is and just drop that shit and not beat yourself up for attaching to it for an extended period of time, for any amount of time really, because then you're just back in it as soon as you judge it. So it's just about seeing it for what it is, and just the ability to see it, like Mark, to your point before, the ability to just see the cliff. Even that is a massive step. That is massive amounts of progress, because for a very long time, we don't even see that cliff. We're just running blind and tumble off of it like over and over and over and wonder why we're falling. Like, because you just jumped off a cliff. But it's that willingness to look at it for what it is. And usually the spots that we're avoiding are just the ones that make us uncomfortable to look at, but we kind of always know what we're doing, and we have a incredible ability of avoiding those things that we know it may be beneficial to take a look at, just because those initial experiences with looking at that are gonna be uncomfortable. But there is another side of that, and that is where the growth begins to happen. But we hinder our own growth because we avoid that discomfort. So it's just about seeing it for what it is and not judging it so much. So that's fucking awesome to hear, Amanda. I'll pass to Jazz.
Yeah, that was fucking incredible, Amanda. I echo Ray's sentiments about wanting to go like punch a wall or something. I don't know. But it's amazing how much of our growth we're limiting because of that trajectory that we're looking for, going up in a straight line. But you can't go up in a straight line without there being discomfort, and like you're always gonna go in this shit. Like that's part of the experience. That's what informs the growth. So it's I wouldn't be doing handstands today for the first time in my fucking life if I were trying to get to a straight line, because that was very uncomfortable for me and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how to fall down and stuff. So there was a lot of uncertainty there, but I also knew that wherever this goes, it's going to be something new, and it's going to inform growth, and it's going to be interesting. And so when I'm out on a walk and stuff, I'm not looking to get somewhere. Like when I'm out on a walk, it's amazing how much I used to think about which direction I should go in, and like being so looking at my thoughts so closely. But now it's looking less and less at them, because the attachment to those thoughts was coming from wanting that straight trajectory of wanting to be at the spot. But now that I have more faith in myself, and because the experience is the point and not the point that I'm looking to get to, then this is what I'm like, the experience becomes the point, and that I'm always here wherever if I'm going right or left, it doesn't matter, because it's all informing the growth and the journey. And so it's incredible how much freedom you get when you are allowing yourself to get that sort of freedom to go left or right, because both the directions are informing that process. And so there's so much less attachment to the thoughts and so much less weight to the decisions you're making, because it's all going to end up in you learning something. And it's honestly, I feel like it ends up resulting in you learning a lot more as well, because you're just not so attached to what this will lead to. And so there's that lightness that Jason was talking about.
Yeah, without that weight and the concern, it's just like you can step into things, and that's what it's all about. It's like that concern for the story, for what it means about me, is what hinders us from stepping into stuff so often. And without that, it's like there's no good reason to not step into something new. Sure, there's always going to be that initial discomfort, inevitably. Like there's almost no way to have no discomfort when you're trying something brand new for the first time. And there's going to be habitual thought patterns that come in. So it's not even about, because we can start judging ourselves into thinking that, I shouldn't be feeling this because there's not so much a story anymore, and I shouldn't be concerned about this. And it's like, there is no should. There's no should or shouldn't. Whatever you go into that, whatever level of discomfort you're at is where you're at. And your avoidance of that, your resistance to that, is just going to send you in the other direction. Like you're always going towards yourself or away from yourself, and getting caught in judging the feelings that you're feeling is sending you the other direction. So whatever you come to that with, that's part of the process too. That's it unfolding. And eventually maybe you've stepped into so many new things and experienced so much discomfort initially that there's just not so much discomfort anymore. And then you just keep stepping through stuff. But that's all it really is, just a willingness to step into a new thing. Because even if it's not a new thing, it's still equally as uncertain as the new thing is, because they all are. And so that's just a practice that you can cultivate, is stepping into the uncertainty, which is each and every fucking moment, and the only way to stay free.
Yeah. If it's worth doing, it's worth fucking up. Right? Like it's not about what it adds to your value or how you think of yourself. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing. Why is it worth doing? Is it worth doing it for its own sake, or is it worth doing it because of what it means about you? In which case it's probably not worth doing. And only because there's a consequence to it. Now you're going to either have to keep doing it, or you're going to have to do something more, or somebody might judge what you just did. And dear God, there's so many considerations, and it's just a world of shit that you just add on to the experience that you're having. And why? Well, because it gives me some comfort to think that I know how I'm doing. That's really it. I just want to know how I'm doing in this life. Am I doing okay? I'm going to look around at everybody else who doesn't fucking know either. And then I'm going to make assumptions based on how I perceive them. Oh, he's got a car that I think would be really nice to drive. Therefore, he's better than me. It's like, right, but he might be an absolute douche and you might not be. And he might be thinking, fuck, I wish I wasn't a douche. So who's better off, the person with the car or the person who's not the douche? Right. And so it really just, it changes your priorities. Everything changes your priority. But I'll tell you right now, it's funny. We've been talking about the difference between like living the narrative and worrying about what it means about Ray and all that shit. It's possible to live in both worlds. It's possible to live in the world and in the fiction of time and others and all that other stuff. You can have a job is what I'm saying. You can have a schedule. You can know what day it is and what month and what year. That's not a problem, but how tightly are you holding on to that? In other words, when you're walking down the street from your house to the corner store, are you thinking about the fact that it's Tuesday? In which case, why? Why? It's not relevant to the step that's in front of you. And if you weren't thinking about the fact that it's Tuesday, you'd be enjoying the day that it is. And so it really just comes down to how tightly you're holding on to this. It comes down to how seriously you take it. It's not that you can't use it. You know, clocks are handy. Admittedly, that's how we schedule these roundtables and how we know it's about to wrap up in about 90 seconds here. So it's handy. But if I wanted to keep talking, I would just keep fucking talking because the experience is more important than my concept of time. Right. And so it really just comes down to priority, as has been said many times in this episode by everyone here. But we are going to wrap up. I'll pass over to Andrew here. So much fun. As always, everyone, Roundtable number 17 was a fucking resounding success because there's no failure.
Amen. Yeah, this had quite the flow to it. I appreciate everyone for sharing. And yeah, that resistance to what day it is, like people get caught up in that in the spiritual community. It's the same thing as the non-duality whole crowd thinking like there's no experience of me. And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, why are you resisting that? What are you afraid of? What you can't handle? That living in both worlds, you're not capable of doing so. So anyway, we can get into a little more of that on Patreon in about 15 minutes here. But yeah, appreciate everyone for joining. It means a ton that you all got on here with us. It was a blast. Appreciate everyone on Twitch for tuning in. Appreciate everyone who listens to it after the fact for an episode. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.